So now we have Mike. You just ask a question, so you warmed up. And yeah, so I'll let you present everything. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, before I kick it off, I just want to say a quick thank you to Luca and the team for having us here. Amazing to be a part of this, to really kind of get an insight into where Web3 and travel is going to be in. It's a space that I'm pretty passionate about. I've been in travel and hospitality for about 25 years. I started in hospitality at the property level, worked in different hotels at the corporate and property level, and then went into, it's going to make me look bad, but I went into legacy player side. So I was with Micros Fidelio. How many people know about Micros Fidelio? Okay. How many people hate Micros Fidelio? Right. So I was doing property management systems. So, converting hotels, taking hotels into one system to another system, doing a lot of integration. So doing a lot of Opera PMS, CRS, S&C development, Oxy development, and so forth. So I think a lot of you guys probably also hate Oxy. And I can relate to that because I actually moved away from the traditional PMS landscape like Micros Fidelio or Oracle Hospitality now, and went into the startup world. So I joined a startup called Nor1 that was based in Silicon Valley. That was actually based at Plug and Play back in 2012. And that was a completely different animal because you're going from a very structured corporate environment into a startup where you're wearing multiple hats. You're hustling in, product development, product marketing, business development, trying to get funding and everything like that. So for me, it was super exciting. And you can probably tell I'm like higher energy and I talk fast, and startup world fit me perfectly. I'm just running on the energy of that. So I went through 3 different startups. 2 of them didn't do so well. One of them definitely died. One of them did pretty good. It actually exited to Oracle Hospitality, which is kind of funny, full circle. But valuation sucked, so we didn't really get that much out of it. But all of that was around Plug and Play. So I went to Plug and Play at a startup back in 2012. Then I joined 2 other startups that was incubated at Plug and Play. And then I ended up working for an innovation team for a travel management company based at Plug and Play. So I've been around the Plug and Play ecosystem for about 8 years, and I officially joined Plug and Play about 2.5 years ago. So I'm pretty excited to kind of tell you a little bit about what we do. But before I jump right into that, I have a QR code. This is just my contact if anybody wants to, reach out. Because one of the things that I love about what we do is meaningful connections, meaningful engagements, and I'm always excited to learn. And this was a great platform. Learned a lot from everybody. So kudos to all the presenters up ahead earlier. I was gonna click, is next. All right, perfect. So a little bit about Plug and Play. I kind of alluded to this earlier. We have 20 different industries that we service. I sit between travel and hospitality and also supporting crypto and digital assets. But Plug and Play really started in 2006, and the travel and hospitality program started in 2016. There's a long history on Plug and Play in terms of the lucky timing of how it started. But essentially, in a nutshell, Saeed Hamidi is the founder, CEO at Plug and Play. He actually migrated from Israel to Silicon Valley when his family's asset was nationalized by the Israeli revolution back in, I think it was like 78 or 79. So when they moved to Silicon Valley, they didn't really have a lot of assets. The only thing they were able to bring to California was Persian rugs. And interestingly enough, the store was in Palo Alto in the heart of Silicon Valley. And what happens at the time, this is like actually more of like mid 90s. If you were a VC or if you were a startup founder and you were successful, you bought Persian rugs. So he actually were introduced to a lot of VCs and startups at the time, and then build a network from that point on. And what's really, really interesting is that he had a kind of space in the store. So one of the VC would say, hey, I have a startup and they need office space. Can they use your office space? And he's like, yeah, sure. That startup was 5 people, and it was called Google. So he actually incubated Google when there was only 5 of them at the time. And then later on, another startup also needed office space, and he didn't actually trust him in terms of them being able to pay the rent. So he said, hey, how about this? I'll take a little equity from you. So he had basically a 1-year equity from this startup. That startup was called PayPal. So pretty lucky in terms of, lucky bets. But then what really changed the business model in terms of like kind of incubating startups without really accelerating them was corporate companies, or his relationship with our companies was like, hey, we're looking for, solution that can touch on this particular area or touch on this particular area. So he was just introducing startups to company without an actual business model in place. So that was kind of the evolution of Plug and Play at the time in terms of incubating startups and then making connections and then finding a business model to tie that together. So in essence, Plug and Play back then was a startup as well. But right now, so we're servicing 20 different industries. Every industry, we have corporate partners that sponsor those. So I'll talk a little bit about the travel and hospitality side, but what's also interesting for everybody here maybe is crypto and digital assets. I actually fought to change that name to be Web3 instead. But when we launched that in November, or when we relaunched it in November, majority of the corporate partners that was interested were fintech side. So I kind of mentioned earlier, like, Fidelity, Alliance Block, Visa, etc. So, all right, just some basic numbers on Plug and Play. This is about 6 months old, but we have about, I think, close to 1,700 portfolio companies right now across those 20 different industries. We run a lot of events, so we have a big event space at our headquarters. It's actually the old Philip Semiconductor HQ. So I think we can hold about like 500, 600 people in the main event space. So Luca, we have no problem hosting you guys. We have a lot of startups in our ecosystem. We actually created our own startup CRM that our corporate partner has access to. So that allows us to do sourcing, allows us to share profiles of startups with our corporate partners. And then we also use that startup CRM to be able to track engagements of our corporate partners and the startups, and then see the evolution from that. It really helps them to track, because a lot of different corporate partners, they have different journeys that they're on in terms of how they're exploring innovation strategies, having a roadmap, how they're executing, and so forth. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but unicorn-wise, I think we have about 37 now. We just announced InRide. InRide is kind of like the Tesla semi-truck competitor. But we have about 2 that's in the travel space. One's called Flyer Labs. They were originally 5 founders that was basically data scientists trying to disrupt aviation analytics. But through the relationship of us connecting them with a lot of our partners, they actually pivoted into airline revenue management system. And about 6 months ago, they became about a year ago, they became a unicorn. And then now they acquire another company and they're moving into the hospitality revenue management space. Block Alliance is one on the crypto side that we're pretty excited about as well. But we do make a lot of investments. We have offices across the world. We have a big presence in the Middle East right now, which I just came back from. We have offices in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. And coming back from that and having been with a few travel conferences, I'll definitely tell you, Web3 is going to be a pretty big focus there. So take a look at that region for sure. But all right, moving on. I know I have just a few minutes. All right, so Plug and Play Travel and Hospitality started in 2016. This is a little bit outdated as well in terms of how many startups we accelerate. But essentially at Plug and Play, we have 3 major services, if you will. One is corporate innovation. So we work with a lot of corporate partners in terms of their digital transformation, their innovation strategy. It could be anywhere from Horizon 1 to Horizon 3. So it could be something like they're focused on right now, something they want to execute on within the next 6 to 8 months. It could be part of their innovation roadmap for 2 or 3 years later on down the road. And it goes anywhere from software, hardware, because we work across the entire landscape of travel and hospitality. So hotel companies like Radisson, Jing Jiang, Louvre Hotels. Radisson is a really good partner of ours out of EMEA. But we have some logos, obviously, you can see here. Obviously, GDS Safe, so Sabre is a partner of ours. How many of you guys know OAG by any chance, out of curiosity? Some of you guys? OAG is pretty cool. They're one of those like data as a fuel. They service a lot of startups. So they actually work with like Hopper, I think Uber as well. So they provide a lot of day service. And I'm pretty excited about some of the products that they're coming out in terms of sustainability. But in any case, I think the only representation in terms of travel that we don't really have is like rental car service and cruise ship yet. So, But a lot of our partners across the globe, so Singapore, we work with Changi Airport, Singapore Airlines. And the great thing is that across the travel landscape, we cross-pollinate a lot. So for example, if we see a really interesting fintech solution, then we think in terms of how that can be applied to travel. Because as some of you guys know, probably about a year ago, Hopper Cloud, when that came out, everybody was like, okay, hey, there's a lot of innovative fintech solutions coming out, but is there something that's not actually coming out from travel that can be cross-pollinated in travel? So it's really interesting. Also sustainability, we get a lot of that too, because almost all our travel corporate partners are looking at sustainability solutions. It can be anywhere from like sustainable aviation fuel to direct carbon capture to just like software solutions that can nudge the traveler and influencing them to book a more sustainable travel or to try to offset through credits or through projects, et cetera. So there's a lot of development in that area as well. And I can talk a little bit more about some of the current focuses, but I would say sustainability, traveler journey, like a seamless traveler journey, that's a big one. I think everybody is trying to find a holy grail on how to solve that problem. Obviously, operational efficiency is a big focus right now, post-pandemic, and that's obviously code for saving money, right? And then ancillary revenue is another big one, and of course, that's code for making more money, right? And then just to give you an idea on the crypto side, we're looking at a lot of DeFi stuff. We're looking at a lot of enterprise blockchain capabilities, infrastructure-wise. There's a lot of interest in the metaverse side as well. Metaverse was a big buzzword last year. Everybody kind of think it died, but I think everybody is looking at it in terms of like exploration, and there's still a lot of interest on the metaverse side of things because there's pretty realistic use cases. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. But another areas that our crypto team is looking at is engaging like user adoption engagements. So interesting solution in terms of like NFT, BI platforms for corporate that's launching an NFT program and how they can get analytics from that, right? All right. This is a slide I've been using for the past year or so with some updated information here. And I just want to use this again to kind of set the tone that there is a lot of exploration, experimentation, execution happening in the travel space. There is a lot of capital being deployed, a lot of commitment that's happening as well. So for example, this is probably a recent one, Japan. This isn't a travel specific, but this is very interesting because Japan is definitely moving pretty fast. We actually launched 2 more offices in Japan, so we have 3 in Japan now. And South Korea is a big one too, because some of you guys probably know they're deploying a lot of capital for their South Korean metaverse. They're intending to be able to have all the civil services available within the metaverse. So you can, like, say, for example, change your driver's license or pay your utility bill in the metaverse, right? But one thing that I like to, and then of course that's Martin Gauss when he was at NFT NYC about a month ago. How many of you guys know Air Baltic's Planey NFT? If you don't, definitely check it out. It's, to me, having had a conversation with Martin, and they started accepting Bitcoin in 2014 for airfares, he is like one of those CEOs that is not just thinking ahead and trying to understand and implement the space. He's actually going out there and having conversations with thought leaders, with builders and innovators himself. He's not sending people, but he's actually going there. So he's one of those guys that is like really moving ahead in that space. So I'm really excited for what they're trying to do. And if I fly Air Baltic, if I was in the region, I'd probably buy a few planes because some of the utilities that they put against it, for example, is to be able to say, like, you buy a plane, you get like 25 miles automatically deposited into your account. If you hold 10, without doing anything, you get maybe like first class or a free flight, etc. So what I would suggest is that if you're ever talking to a travel supplier in the hotel or airline space, think of how you can socialize the value delivery of what you're trying to do in terms of not just saying like it's an NFT, but talk about the utility of it, right? Because you're trying to get them bought in. But another thing I want to call out is I think some of you guys know TravelX. That's pretty interesting. I was having a conversation with Pablo the other day about this because we were trying to bring them in to do a presentation for a bunch of airlines. is the adoption. It's very interesting. There's a lot of airline exploring that space right now because there's a lot of efficiency that's going to be able to get gain. Another really interesting one is high tech. How many of you guys know about high tech? High tech. High tech. It's a pretty big U.S.-based hospitality technology conference. So all of the major suppliers are there. All of the major like legacy tech players are there. So companies like Muse, companies like Oracle Hospitality, Sabre, Amadeus, etc. They're all there. And what I like about this is that they're also talking about Web3. They're also talking about NFT. They're doing these educations, etc. And what I like about this is when I talk to startup that is trying to get a foothold in this space, I'll talk a little bit more about that later, is look up these type of conferences in the space that you're in and find, just look through the agenda, who the speakers are, who's attending, maybe go if you can. But if you can't go, at least you'll be able to see who's the speaker so that you can try to get engagements that way. So a little tip and trick on that front. But there's definitely a lot of movement. And I'll share this one. This is an event I ran about 3 weeks ago for Airbus. Airbus is one of our partners. They do a cross-industry workshop once a year. Last year, it was focused on sustainability. And this year, we decided to support them in a Web3 aviation focus. So this is a 2-day workshop that we ran out of Plug and Play HQ in Silicon Valley. They brought about 9 of their airline partners. We invited Lufthansa. And we brought about 9 different startups in the Web3 space across these bubbles. So startups that's in the NFT, digital currency space, blockchain, cybersecurity, AR, VR, metaverse space. And what was really, really cool about this is the startups got to go on stage and pitch to all the airline execs for about 20 minutes. But because we wanted to make sure there was deeper engagement, we set up multiple 1-hour workshops. So if there was an NFT startup that was pitching their solution, then we could have a workshop where the airline executive could say, hey, I'm looking to either revamp my loyalty program, augment my loyalty program, et cetera. Then they can actually go through a workshop with the startup, with the founders, to be able to figure out, how do we do this? What do you need? What is the operational requirements? Was that my time?
No, that one.
Okay.
On the tablet, I don't know exactly.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to go fast. All right, awesome. But yeah, so this was super cool because Airbus brought their, not just their carbon market insight team, they brought their A-Cube team. A-Cube is kind of their skunk works, if you will, that's based out of Silicon Valley. So the A-Cube team looks at a lot of cool stuff. For example, like eVTOL, air taxis or vertiports, technology, and so forth. But they're also looking at blockchain solutions. And then, of course, Airbus's CVC arm was there as well. This is. Oh, sorry. 2 different slides. So this is another slide that I use when I talk to a lot of our corporate partners or others that's interested. So last year alone, I did about 6 different metaverse talks with corporate partners, not just in the travel and hospitality space, but also in the fintech space, brand and retail space, et cetera. A lot of our team always asks me to do like a metaverse thing or a Web3 thing because I'm kind of one of the few people in the office that's like super passionate about this. So it's kind of like my side hustle and my second job, if you will. So I'm really excited to talk about this with our corporate partners because I like to inspire them as to what the possibility of this type of technology and how they can adopt it. But also, how do you approach it, right? Like, do you just like dive right into it? What are some of like the methods that you can approach this technology without too much capital deployment, without too much people involvement? So some of the things we try to ask them is like, how would this technology impact how much time you're going to be allocating to it? Do you have team members within your org that's passionate that you can tap into? Within, let's say, JetBlue, do you know there's people within your org that's really excited about Web3 technology? Because if you are, and you're going to have a conversation with a Web3 startup, bring them along, have them join the call, right? So that also helps. And that's a great question for startups to ask as well. If you're going to be talking to a supplier, you could say, hey, I know I'm going to be talking to the CTO, CMO, et cetera, but is there anybody on your team that's really, kind of want to qualify the audience, right? Anyone on your team that's super excited about NFTs, they might find this interesting, et cetera. So, I mean, one of the things I guess is like the younger generation, I'm going to date myself, but I've been in hospitality for about 25 years. So I started my first hotel work in 95. So I really find it interesting when like my nephew is always asking me for, Roblox gift cards, for Christmas and birthday. And then I started realizing like they're getting trained in Web3 already. They're transacting in Roblox. They're selling, they're swapping, digital goods. It's pretty crazy. So really excited about this space. But essentially for me, I just really try to make sure that our corporate partner starts taking steps to learn and understand like what type of use case, what type of application, and how this is going to impact, not just internally on their team, but also their customers. And I think that's important for us to also know is, I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide or so, but it's the sympathy part, the different layers of sympathy. So I'll move. I know some of you guys probably hate me for putting a JP Morgan quote on this, but JP Morgan actually did put out a very interesting metaverse research paper. And this was actually a quote coming out from JP Morgan. And I think Accenture just also released a report about 2 months ago on Web3, metaverse specifically. So there's still a lot of interest out there, and they're all trying to figure out how do they approach it. So, right. This is a business model canvas for evaluating This is a business model canvas for evaluating Web3. So there's 2 ways that you can look at this. You can look at this from a VC lens, or you can look at this from a travel company lens. So just to really quickly say, I'm only going to talk about the purple and the green part because I think everybody here probably already is pretty familiar with the blue section. But the purple part focuses on business value delivery side. I'll spend a little bit more time on that one. And the green part is the broader ecosystem. So why I think the purple part is going to be important for you guys here is it really puts you into perspective. If you're, let's say, Hilton, or if you're Accor Hotels, and you're going to start thinking about working with a Web3 company, you really need to understand what is the value proposition, what is going to be the competitive advantage for you to adopt this technology, right? So you have to think about, okay, if I'm going to talk to Hilton Hotel, CTO, or Accor Hotel CMO, like, what is important to them? Who do they report to? And why would this matter to their customer? If you can approach your pitch and your conversation with those people, then it's going to resonate more, right? So it's not just like, here's the problem, we see it, here's the solution. But maybe here's the problem for you, here's the problem for your leadership, here's the problem for your customer, and then align that with the solution for all those areas. I probably won't spend too much time on this, but there is another area that I personally think has been talked about earlier already that I completely agree with, which is eliminating Web3 lingos when you're talking to corporate partners, potential partners. Because unless you already know based on your research, unless you follow them on Twitter and they've been posting about crypto stuff and Twitter stuff and like NFT stuff, and they know their stuff. But if you don't know that they don't know, then assume that they don't know. A really good example was the Airbus event. We had a startup go on stage, spend about the first 10 minutes talking about their solution, fully resonated with everybody in the room. And then as soon as he started talking about zero knowledge proof, I can see everybody was just kind of like, zero knowledge, what? It was like, it just went over and then it kind of got lost in translation, right? So make sure you understand who you're talking to and what the audience and qualify that. That's super important. And if you don't know, maybe before going into a pitch, just set the baseline. Like, hey, this is what I'm going to talk about. This is the technology. Define it a little bit. The best way to do it is using examples or analogy that is relevant to the industry that they're in, right? So if you're going to talk about, loyalty programs, look up their loyalty program, figure out what their loyalty program is doing, and then use that as part of your pitch. That will be helpful as well. But yeah, I'll kind of skip through the rest of this. But I think if any, oh, by the way, this isn't mine. I'm not trying to take credit and misappropriate this. I did a metaverse workshop with one of our telecom companies based out of a Swiss telecom company, and we kind of worked on this together. So it's not really mine. I'm not trying to take credit for this, but feel free. I can share, if anybody is interested, I can actually share like the full research report. I know they're working on an iteration of this, so I can share that as well. But all right, next slide. So this is just some tips that we give to almost all the startups that we set up deal flows with our corporate partners for. And one of the biggest suggestions we have for them is figure out how you can reduce and remove friction, right? So in terms of a really good example is if the corporate partner, let's say Changi Airport or Singapore Airline, they're super interested and they may want to do a POC with you, right? Figure out how, and there's going to be a lot of back and forth questions and so forth. Maybe you do your research and you know what the system looks like, you know what the PSS integrations, you know what the PMS integration, et cetera. But maybe you could, one easy question is, if you require data, it's like, hey, do you guys have a sandbox environment, right? If there's a sandbox environment that I can get data from, and I can quickly tap into that, and then I can show you how our product works with your data, et cetera. Another way is maybe, there's a lot of compliance in the hospitality and travel space. There's things like GDPR, PCI compliance, et cetera. So figure out how you can remove the friction. We tell our corporate partners that too, right? It's like, don't give a startup a 40-page, like a NDA, right? So the same thing. So removing frictions, figuring out like, okay, hey, if this company wants to work with us, how do we make sure that we can do it fast and easy and we don't put too much on them? Okay. Getting a foot in the door. So the best way is to find the enablers. Obviously, plug and play, we're an enabler. I'm pitching, plug and play a little bit here. But we're an accelerator program. So we run up with those 20 different industry I just showed. We run 2 accelerators a year. So the travel team, we run one that is actually wrapping up in June. And then we'll kick off our batch 16 in July, and that wraps in December. So accelerator programs, figuring out who the accelerators are out there that's focused on either travel or Web3. If both, great. Same thing for VCs too. If anybody knows, I can share it. We actually, there's a publicly available Web3 VC database that's out there. Super awesome. I'm not sure if anybody's seen it, but it literally breaks it down for you and shows you the top VCs that's investing in Web3. And then, is that mine? And then it also tells you like how many investments they've done, at what stage. There's so much data points on there. So for anybody that's looking to raise in the traditional way, that's a pretty cool website to check out. For the startups in our ecosystem, we give them access to investors, mentors, obviously our corporate partners. So it really accelerates the process. Some of the corporate partners really is super helpful. They will tell them what their pain point is, what they're looking for. And then a lot of our mentors, we have about maybe 30 mentors in our program. And these are like, ex-CEOs in the travel space, chairmen, teachers and so forth. So a lot of thought leadership in there as well. Obviously we have like Doug Rice. How many of you guys know Doug Rice? He's a good, of course you know Cynthia, yeah. So everybody knows, Cynthia was actually part of our batch 14 that graduated in November of last year and was our Startup Award winner. So I should give you a shout out, Cynthia, for inviting me here or engaged, connecting the dots for me on this one. Another one is conferences. How many of you guys go to travel conferences? The big ones like ITB, ATM, WTM, High Tech, etc. Right? yeah, I think those are really good. You know, if there's a speaker, if there's an event that's talking about like Web3 tech and so forth, definitely try to approach them and try to see if you could build relationship that way as well. How about association events or like IATA association and so forth, like HTNG, etc. So figuring out like those players is super awesome. So like one of the reason why I really like the startup that we invested into that is in the travel digital identity space is because not just having the EU regulation approval, but also they're working with IATA, which is super helpful to try to make an impact in this space. So, all right, qualified. I kind of talked a little bit about that already, so I'll kind of skip it. But definitely, you know,
Mike, we are
who.
way beyond the time.
Oh.
So maybe if you can wrap it up a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think this is going to be my last slide, really. So I think a lot of the things I wanted to talk about, there's been some expression on it already. So, you know, really, if you can explain your value proposition without using Web3 terminology, I think that's going to be super helpful if you're trying to talk to someone on the corporate side. And then really trying to figure out ways where you can bridge the gap between traditional business process, traditional business models, and the business pain point with your solution. That's going to be super helpful as well because it makes it you know, a little bit more frictionless if you understand like, okay, here's your business model, here's your business process, and I'm not trying to disrupt you, I'm trying to augment, collaborate with you. That make it help. So, all right, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, the last slide was just more of a quote that I really like, which is just, you know, innovation doesn't need to be unprecedented because a lot of times I hear a startup go into a pitch and they're like, we're going to disrupt and we're going to, you know, make this huge splash. And honestly, I had startups pitch to a GDS, to an OTA, and literally said, I'm going to disrupt you. Literally. Which I'm just like, oh, great, you know. So, but just really think of like, okay, what is the one pain point that is going to help them? If it's going to be like operational efficiencies or ancillary revenue or both, that's going to resonate, right? So it doesn't have to be this whole big splashy thing and like really deep techie thing. You know, you just got to keep it simple. What was the theme earlier, Cynthia said, and I fully agree. So that goes with engaging with corporate partner as well. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Mike.